Step away from the throne before it decides you do not belong to this world anymore. The voice did not echo. It cut through the hall like cold steel, quiet and absolute. Clara Whitmore froze with the cloth still in her hand. Her fingers pressed against the black stone of the throne as if she had forgotten how to move. The chamber around her was vast, stretching nearly 100 feet from wall to wall, lined with pillars carved from obsidian that seemed to drink the light. No servants were ever assigned here alone. No one was supposed to touch anything, especially not the throne. Yet there she was, a maid with worn shoes and trembling breath, standing at the center of power she did not understand. She had only been told the room needed cleaning. No explanation, no warning, just a sharp order and the threat of losing the only job that kept her mother alive. The cloth in her hand was damp, streaked with gray dust that should not have been there, as if time itself had settled onto the surface. When she first touched the throne, she felt it. Not cold, not warm, something else. Something that pulsed once beneath her palm like a heartbeat buried deep inside stone. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself to finish the job and leave. But now the air had changed. The silence was heavier. The shadows along the walls seemed to lean closer, as if watching. And behind her, footsteps that made no sound had already closed the distance. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you cannot miss. Clara slowly turned. Her heart did not race. It pounded once, then again, each beat louder than the last. The man standing at the entrance did not need an introduction. Tall, still, dressed in black that absorbed every flicker of light in the chamber. His face was too sharp, too perfect, like something carved rather than born. And his eyes, they were not red like the stories. They were darker, deeper, like a storm waiting beneath ice. King Darius Night Vale had returned early. No guards announced him. No doors creaked open. One moment the hall was empty. The next he was there, watching her. His gaze did not move from her hand. From where her skin still rested against the throne. The cloth slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor with a soft, final sound. No one spoke. No one breathed. Somewhere in the distance, a single candle flickered out. Darius took one step forward, then another, each movement slow, deliberate, controlled. The kind of control that came from centuries of never needing to hurry. When he stopped, he was only a few feet away, close enough for her to feel the cold radiating from him, close enough to understand that if he chose, she would not leave this room alive. His voice, when it came, was softer than before, more dangerous. Who allowed you here? Clara swallowed, her throat dry, but her eyes did not drop. Not yet, because something else was happening, something neither of them expected. Beneath her palm, the throne pulsed again, this time stronger, and the king saw it. The throne pulsed again, stronger than before, and this time the sound was not imagined. It echoed through the chamber like a low heartbeat, deep and ancient, vibrating through the stone beneath Clara Whitmore's feet. King Darius Night Vale did not move, but something in his expression shifted, subtle and dangerous. His eyes dropped from her face to her hand, still resting against the throne, and for the first time since he entered, there was something else beneath the control. Not anger. Not yet. Recognition. Then the air snapped. Steel rang out as blades were drawn in perfect unison. From the shadows along the walls, figures emerged, silent until now, dressed in dark armor that seemed to grow out of the darkness itself. Guards. Elite. Their eyes were fixed on Clara, their movements precise, lethal, unquestioning. One step and they would reach her. One command and she would die. Clara did not step back. She felt the danger, every instinct in her body screaming at her to run, to drop to her knees, to beg for mercy she knew would not come. But her hand did not leave the throne. She did not understand why. It felt wrong to move, as if something deeper than fear was holding her in place. The closest guard stopped 3 feet away, blade angled toward her throat. His voice was cold, stripped of emotion. You have trespassed in a sacred chamber. You have touched what no human is permitted to touch. By order the crown, You will be executed immediately. The word echoed. Executed. Clara finally looked away from the throne and met his gaze. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than she expected. I was told to clean this room. I did not know. The guard did not react. It did not matter. Knowledge did not change law. Behind him, another voice cut through the tension, sharper, older, filled with authority. Then she dies for ignorance. The council will not tolerate contamination of the throne. A second figure stepped forward, draped in deep crimson, eyes glowing faintly with something that was not entirely light. One of the High Council. The temperature in the room seemed to drop even further. Clara felt it on her skin, like frost spreading from the inside out. Still, she did not move. Still, her hand remained where it was. Because the throne was no longer silent. It pulsed again, stronger. The black stone beneath her palm warmed, then brightened, faint at first, then unmistakable. Lines appeared, thin, golden, carving themselves into the surface as if responding to her presence. A symbol, ancient, alive. The guards froze, not out of mercy, out of shock. That is not possible, one of them whispered. The council member took another step forward, his expression darkening. Remove her hand. Now. The guard nearest to Clara shifted, preparing to obey. His blade lowered slightly as his free hand reached toward her wrist. The moment his fingers came within inches of her skin, something broke. Not sound, not light, something deeper. The air itself seemed to resist him. His arms stopped mid-motion, muscles locking as if an invisible force held him back. He tried again. Harder. Nothing. His expression cracked for the first time. My lord, he said, his voice tight with strain. I cannot. Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. Every eye in the chamber turned toward the throne, toward the girl standing before it. And then, slowly, King Darius Nightvale stepped forward. No one moved to stop him. No one dared. He closed the distance until he stood directly in front of Clara, close enough that she could see the faint lines beneath his eyes, the weight of years no human could carry. He did not look at her. Not yet. His gaze was fixed on the symbol forming beneath her hand. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before, controlled with effort. Remove your hand. Clara hesitated. For a moment, she thought about obeying, about stepping back and ending whatever this was before it became something worse. But the warmth beneath her palm deepened, spreading up her arm like a pulse calling to something inside her she did not understand. And without knowing why, she shook her head. No. The word hung in the air, fragile and impossible. Every guard tensed. Every member of the council stiffened. No one said no to the king. No one survived it. Darius lifted his eyes then, meeting hers fully for the first time. And something in the room shifted again, quieter this time, but far more dangerous. Not rage. Not yet. Something colder. Something calculating. As if for the first time, the most powerful being in that chamber was not entirely certain what would happen next. The throne pulsed again. And this time, it did not feel like a warning. It felt like recognition. King Darius Nightvale did not repeat himself. He did not need to. The single word no still hung between them, fragile and defiant, and yet the world had not ended. That alone was enough to send a ripple of unease through every creature in the chamber. The guards did not advance. The council did not speak. For a moment that stretched far too long, the only sound was the slow, deliberate pulse of the throne beneath Clara Whitmore's hand. Darius studied her in silence. Not her face, not her posture, something deeper, as if he were looking through her, past the surface, searching for a truth that refused to reveal itself. Then, finally, he moved, not toward her hand, not toward the throne, toward her, close enough now that the faint scent of cold stone and something older, something metallic and ancient, settled into the air around her. Clara felt it in her lungs, in the back of her throat, in the steady beat of her heart that refused to slow. He lifted his hand, slowly, deliberately, every movement controlled, and for the first time since she had entered the chamber, Clara felt fear take full shape inside her chest. Not because of the guards, not because of the council, because of him, because of what would happen if he touched her. The room seemed to understand it too. No one breathed. No one moved. The world narrowed to the space between his hand and hers. 1 inch. Less than 1 inch. When his fingers brushed her skin, the reaction was immediate. Not from her. From him. Darius recoiled as if struck, his hand snapping back with a speed that shattered the illusion of calm he had maintained. A sharp sound cut through the chamber, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Pain. Real. Uncontrolled. For the first time in centuries, the king stepped back. The guards froze, their expressions shifting from discipline to disbelief. The council member in crimson stared openly now, his composure slipping. Impossible, he whispered, the word breaking under the weight of what he had just witnessed. Darius lowered his hand slowly, his gaze fixed on his own palm, as if it had betrayed him. The skin there had changed. Not burned, not wounded, marked. A faint line, barely visible, glowed beneath the surface like something trying to rise through it. He clenched his hand into a fist, and the glow dimmed, but it did not disappear. Then he looked up, at Clara, fully. No distrant, no distance, just focus, pure and absolute. What are you? He asked, his voice quieter now, but far more dangerous than before. Clara opened her mouth, but no answer came, because she did not know. She had been a maid an hour ago, a nobody, a girl who counted every dollar, who walked miles to work because she could not afford a car, who kept her head down because that was how you survived. And now the throne beneath her hand was alive. The most powerful man in the room had stepped back because of her, and every creature around them was waiting. The throne pulsed again, stronger. The golden lines spread further across the black stone, forming patterns too complex to understand, too precise to be random. They moved with purpose, circling outward from where her hand rested, as if mapping something long forgotten. The council member stepped forward again, his voice sharper now, edged with something close to fear. My lord, this cannot continue. Whatever she is, it is not human. We must end this before it spreads, before it awakens something we cannot control. The guards shifted, uncertain now, their loyalty pulling them in 2 directions. The law demanded action. The king had not given the order. Darius did not look at them. He did not acknowledge the council. His attention never left Clara. Slowly, he stepped forward again. This time, he did not reach for her hand. He reached for her face. He stopped just short of touching her, his fingers hovering near her cheek, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him, but not close enough to trigger whatever had just happened. You're not supposed to exist, he said, the words measured, deliberate. And yet you stand in my throne room, touching what belongs to my bloodline, and it answers you. Clara felt her breath catch. Not from fear this time, from something else, something she could not name. The throne pulsed again, and this time the entire chamber responded. The pillars trembled, the air shifted, and somewhere deep beneath the castle, something ancient began to wake. The tremor did not stop. It spread, slow at first, like a distant echo beneath the earth, then stronger, rolling through the foundation of the castle in waves that made the stone beneath their feet hum with a low, ancient resonance. Clara Whitmore felt it travel up through her arm, into her chest, in her breath, until it was no longer just the throne that pulsed. It was the entire space around her. The pillars lining the chamber vibrated softly, their surfaces catching faint streaks of gold that had not been there before. The air grew heavier, charged with something unseen, something that made even the oldest vampires in the room shift uneasily. King Darius Nightvale did not step back this time. He stood his ground, his gaze locked on Clara as if the rest of the world had narrowed to a single point. Around them, the council broke first. This is a breach of every law we have upheld for centuries, the crimson-robed elder said, his voice rising, losing the cold control it once held. The throne is bound to the royal bloodline. If it responds to her, then something has gone terribly wrong. Or she has. He turned sharply toward the guards. End this now, before whatever is waking finishes waking. The command snapped through the chamber like a whip. The guards hesitated, not out of fear of Clara, but because the king had not spoken. That hesitation was enough. Darius lifted one hand, a small movement, almost lazy, but it froze the entire room. No one touches her, he said. The words were quiet, but they carried weight that pressed against every wall, every breath, every heartbeat in the chamber. The guards lowered their weapons, not by choice, but because their bodies obeyed him before their thoughts could catch up. The council elder stepped forward, anger now clear in his eyes. You would defy the council for a human servant, he said, for something you cannot explain? This is how empires fall, my king. Not from enemies, but from what they allow inside their own walls. Darius did not look at him. His focus never left Clara. He took another step closer, slow, deliberate, until there was almost no space left between them. You said you were told to clean this room, he said, his voice low, controlled. Who gave you that order? Clara swallowed, the question pulling her back to something familiar, something human. The supervisor on the lower floor, she said. He said the regular staff did not show up, and that this room needed to be cleaned before nightfall. He did not tell me what this place was. A flicker of something passed through Darius' expression. Not surprise. Calculation. He turned his head slightly, just enough for the nearest guard to understand. Bring me the one who gave that order, he said. Alive. Immediately. The guard vanished without a sound. The chamber tightened again, tension shifting, redirecting, but not fading. The throne pulsed once more, stronger than before, and this time the golden pattern spread beyond the seat, crawling along the base, reaching outward across the floor in thin, glowing lines that moved with purpose. Clara felt her knees weaken, but she did not fall. Not because she was strong, because something held her upright. Something inside the rhythm that now matched her heartbeat. Darius saw it. He saw everything. You feel it, he said quietly. That is not fear. Clara shook her head slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. I do not know what it is, but it is not hurting me. That answer changed something. The smallest shift, but unmistakable. The council elder stepped back, his confidence cracking. It should be burning her, he said. It should reject her. That throne has destroyed lesser beings for far less. Darius' eyes darkened. And yet it does not, he replied. The silence that followed was heavier than any command, because now the truth was no longer hidden. The throne was not rejecting her. It was choosing her. Deep beneath the castle, the tremor sharpened. Something ancient, something buried long before Darius had taken the throne, stirred with growing awareness. The golden lines reached the edge of the chamber floor, then stopped, waiting, as if the next move no longer belonged to the king, but to the girl who had been told to clean a room she should never have entered. The golden lines did not fade. They held their place across the floor like veins of light, alive and waiting, as if the entire chamber had become a living map centered on Clara Whitmore. No one moved. No one dared interrupt whatever force had taken hold of the throne. King Darius Night Vale stood closest to her, his presence steady, but even he did not attempt to command what he did not yet understand. Then the doors opened, not slowly, not with ceremony. They slammed inward with a force that echoed through the chamber, breaking the fragile stillness. 2 guards dragged a man between them, his feet barely touching the ground as they forced him forward. He struggled, panic already written across his face before he even saw the throne. Before he saw her. Before he saw the king. Please, I did not know, he stammered, his voice shaking as they threw him to his knees on the cold stone floor. It was just a cleaning order. I was told the upper halls needed attention. I sent her because she was available. That is all. The supervisor. Clara recognized him instantly. The same man who had shoved the cleaning cloth into her hands, who had not looked at her twice, who had spoken like her life was a small inconvenience in his day. Now he could not even lift his head. Darius did not look at him immediately. His attention lingered on Clara for one more moment, as if confirming something unseen, before shifting at last to the trembling figure on the floor. You sent her into this chamber, he said, his voice calm, but carrying something far more dangerous than anger. The man swallowed hard, nodding too quickly. Yes, my lord. I swear I did not know what this room was. The doors were unmarked. The usual staff was not there. I thought it was just another hall. A mistake. It was just a mistake. The word hung in the air. Mistake. Around them, the council watched closely, their expressions sharpened by suspicion. One misstep, one sign of weakness from the king, and they would act. Darius stepped forward, each movement measured, until he stood over the man. A mistake, he repeated quietly. The throne pulsed again, stronger. The golden lines flared brighter across the floor, and for a brief moment, the light reflected in Darius' eyes, turning them into something older, something far removed from anything human. The man on the floor began to shake harder. My lord, please, I have served faithfully. I have never disobeyed. I did not know she would. He stopped. His voice caught as he finally dared to look up. His eyes locked onto Clara, onto the glow surrounding her. And whatever words he had left died in his throat. Because now he understood. This was no mistake. This was something far worse. Something no one in that chamber had planned. Darius followed his gaze back to Clara. The silence stretched, heavy with decision. Then he spoke. You are telling me, he said slowly, that you sent a human into the most protected chamber in this castle, without verification, without escort, without understanding what she might encounter. The man nodded frantically, desperation breaking through his fear. Yes, my lord. I accept full responsibility. I will accept any punishment. Just please. His voice cracked completely now. Do not let whatever this is be blamed on me. The council elder stepped forward again, seizing the moment. You see, my king, he said, his tone controlled but urgent. This is exactly why we have laws. This is why we do not allow humans into spaces they cannot comprehend. One error, one moment of negligence, and now the throne itself is reacting in ways we have not seen in centuries. This cannot be allowed to continue. End it now, and restore order. Darius did not answer immediately. His gaze moved once more between the man kneeling before him and the girl standing at the center of something ancient and awakening. Then he made his choice, not by raising his voice, not by turning to the council, but with a single, quiet command. Remove him. The guards reacted instantly. The man cried out, reaching forward, his hands scraping against the stone as they pulled him away. My lord, please, I did not mean. His voice faded as he was dragged toward the doors, desperation echoing until it was swallowed by silence once more. The chamber stilled again, but something had changed. The source of blame was gone, the explanation removed, and what remained was far more dangerous. Clara, the throne, and the truth no one could deny. This was never about a mistake. The golden lines pulsed again, brighter than before, and this time they did not stop at the edge of the floor. They climbed, up the steps, up the base of the throne, and slowly, unmistakably, they began to rise toward the seat itself, as if preparing for something that had been waiting far longer than anyone in that room had been alive. The golden light reached the seat of the throne. It did not stop. It climbed higher, tracing ancient lines across the black stone as if uncovering something buried beneath centuries of silence. Clara Whitmore felt the change before anyone else. The pulse beneath her palm shifted. It was no longer just a rhythm. It was a call. Not loud, not forceful, but impossible to ignore. Her fingers tightened slightly against the surface without her meaning to. Her breath slowed. The fear that had once filled her chest began to fade, replaced by something quieter, something steady. King Darius Nightvale saw it happen. He saw the moment her posture changed, the subtle straightening of her shoulders, the way her gaze no longer searched the room for escape. She was no longer reacting. She was listening. The council saw it too, and this time their reaction was not confusion. It was alarm. She is being claimed, the crimson-robed elder said, his voice cutting through the chamber with urgency. This is not a random reaction. The throne is recognizing her. If this continues, it will bind to her completely. We cannot allow that. The word allow echoed, sharp and desperate. The guards shifted again, uncertain, their discipline strained by something they had never been trained to face. Darius did not move immediately. His eyes remained on Clara, studying every detail, every change, as if committing it to memory. Then, slowly he spoke. "What happens if it binds?" he asked, his voice calm, but carrying an edge that demanded truth. The elder hesitated. For the first time, hesitation. Then he answered, "The throne will reject you, my king." The words fell into the chamber like a stone into deep water. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. Darius did not react outwardly, but something in the air shifted, subtle and dangerous. And her, he continued. "What happens to her?" The elder swallowed, his composure cracking under the weight of the moment. "She will not remain what she is," he said. "No human can survive a full binding. She will either transform into something we cannot control, or she will be consumed by the power itself. Either outcome threatens everything we have built." The throne pulsed again. Stronger. Clara felt it spread through her arm, across her chest, into her spine. Her knees weakened, but she did not fall. Instead, she took a breath. Slow, deep, and when she spoke, her voice was steadier than it had any right to be. "I do not feel like I am dying," she said quietly. Every head in the chamber turned toward her. Even the council fell silent. "I feel like," she hesitated, searching for the right words, something that could explain what she herself did not understand. "Like I have been here before." The statement hung in the air, impossible and yet undeniable. Darius' gaze sharpened, not with disbelief, with recognition of something far more complex. "Memory," he said softly, almost to himself. The elder shook his head immediately. "No, that is not possible. The throne does not grant memory. It responds only to blood, to lineage, to those who were born to it." His voice faltered slightly at the end, because now the implication was clear. Darius stepped forward again, closing the remaining distance until he stood directly beside Clara, not in front of her, not opposing her, but beside her. A position no one in that chamber had ever seen him take with a human. Slowly, carefully, he lowered himself onto one knee. The movement sent a visible shock through the room. The king did not kneel. Not to anyone. Not for anything. And yet he did not take his eyes off the throne as he did it. The golden lines brightened instantly, reacting not to his submission, but to his proximity to her. He lifted his hand again, stopping just short of touching her skin. The pain from before had not been forgotten. He would not repeat that mistake. "Clara," he said, her name steady and deliberate, as if anchoring her to something. "Real. Listen to me. Whatever you feel, do not fight it. The throne is not attacking you. It is responding. The difference matters." Clara turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze. For the first time since all of this began, there was no fear in her eyes. Only confusion. And something else. Trust. "I'm not trying to fight it," she said. "I just do not know what it wants." The throne answered before anyone else could. The light surged. The golden lines that had covered the seat suddenly converged, pulling inward, focusing into a single point directly beneath her hand. Then, with a sudden, silent force, the throne shifted. Not physically, not in a way the eye could fully follow, but enough that every creature in the room felt it. The center of power had moved, and it was no longer aligned with the king. The shift was undeniable. It was not a sound, not a movement that the eye could fully capture, but every being in that chamber felt it with absolute clarity. The throne no longer answered to the king. It answered to her. The silence that followed was not empty. It was charged, stretched to the breaking point, as if the entire castle itself was holding its breath. Then everything broke at once. "Kill her." The command did not come from Darius. It came from the council, sharp and immediate, driven not by anger, but by fear that had finally found its voice. The crimson-robed elder stepped forward, no longer hiding his urgency. "She has already begun the binding. If it completes, the throne will reject its rightful ruler. This is no longer a question of law. This is survival. End it now." The guards did not hesitate this time. Their loyalty to the king was absolute, but their loyalty to the survival of their kind ran just as deep. Steel flashed as blades rose again, faster, closer, closing the distance that had once been held by hesitation. Clara Whitmore saw it coming. She saw the shift in their eyes, the moment discipline gave way to necessity. And for the first time since the throne had begun to respond to her, fear returned. Not for herself, for what she might cause, for what she might become. Her hand twitched against the throne, instinct screaming at her to pull away, to break whatever connection had begun, before it crossed a line that could not be undone. But the moment she tried, the throne reacted. The pulse surged violently, not gentle, not guiding, but forceful, resisting her movement as if it refused to let her go. The golden light flared, blinding for a fraction of a second, and the air itself pushed outward in a silent shock that stopped the guards mid-step. Not thrown back, not harmed, held, suspended in place as if time itself had tightened around them. Every blade froze inches from her. Every movement locked. The chamber fell into a silence deeper than before, one that felt unnatural, imposed, absolute. Even the council could not move. Only two figures remained untouched by it. Clara and Darius. He rose slowly from his kneeling position, his gaze sweeping across the frozen guards, the halted blades, the impossible stillness that now filled the room. Then he looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, with certainty. "You did not do that on purpose," he said. It was not a question. Clara shook her head, her breath uneven, her voice barely steady. "I try to stop it. I try to move my hand. The throne would not let me." The truth settled between them, heavy and unavoidable. This was no longer about a human girl who had made a mistake. This was about something that had chosen her, something that now protected her. Darius turned his head slightly, his voice cutting through the frozen air with quiet authority. "Stand down." The command should not have worked. The guards could not move. And yet, slowly, as if his voice reached something deeper than the force holding them, the tension in their bodies eased. The blades lowered. Time resumed. The moment shattered, and sound rushed back into the chamber all at once. The council elder staggered back a step, his control slipping completely now. "You see it," he said, his voice strained, almost pleading. "She is already altering the throne, already bending it to her will. If you do not act now, there'll be nothing left to save." Darius faced him fully for the first time since the chaos began. And in that moment, the difference between king and council became undeniable. "No," he said quietly. "She's not bending it." He turned back to Clara, his gaze steady, unwavering. "It is recognizing her." The words landed, harder than any command, because they carried truth, the kind that could not be argued, only feared. Clara felt it too. The connection beneath her palm shifted again, softer now, no longer resisting, no longer forcing. Waiting, as if it had proven something and now expected a response. Slowly, carefully, she lifted her hand. This time, the throne did not stop her. The golden light dimmed, not disappearing, but settling, like embers instead of flame. The chamber breathed again, but nothing returned to what it had been. The throne had awakened. The council had chosen fear, and the king had chosen her. The chamber did not return to calm. It only pretended to. The golden light had dimmed, but it had not disappeared, and every creature in that room knew it. The throne had awakened, and now it was watching, waiting, deciding. Clara Whitmore stood where she was, her hand no longer touching the stone, but the connection had not fully broken. She could still feel it, faint now, like an echo inside her chest that refused to fade. Across from her, King Darius Night Vale remained still, his presence anchoring the space between chaos and control. But the council was done waiting. "This cannot continue," the crimson-robed elder said, his voice no longer measured, no longer restrained. "You have seen what she can do. You have seen what the throne is doing. If you do not act, then we will." The words were not a threat. They were a declaration. The air shifted immediately as the rest of the council stepped forward, their movements synchronized, deliberate, ancient power rising around them like a storm gathering force. The guards hesitated again, caught between two commands that could not coexist. Protect the king. Protect the throne. And now those two things were no longer the same. Darius turned slowly to face them, placing himself fully between Clara and the advancing council. The movement was subtle, but it was final. A line drawn. No one crosses, he said. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. It carried through the chamber with absolute clarity, pressing against every surface like an invisible weight. The council stopped, but only for a moment. You would stand against us for her, the elder asked, disbelief sharpening his tone. For something that threatens the very foundation of your rule. Darius did not hesitate. Yes. The answer landed without hesitation, without doubt. Because this is no longer about my rule. That statement alone was enough to fracture the fragile balance that had held until now. The council reacted instantly. Power surged. Not physical movement, not blades or violence, but something older, something woven into the very fabric of what they were. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, frost creeping along the edges of the stone floor as the council began to exert pressure, an invisible force designed to crush, to contain, to overpower. Clara felt it hit her like a wave. Not pain, not exactly, but weight, as if the air itself had turned solid, pressing against her lungs, her chest, her bones. She staggered slightly, her balance slipping as the force tried to push her down, to force her to her knees. Her breath caught, her vision blurred at the edges. And then something answered, not from the throne this time, from within her. The faint echo she had felt before flared, not violently, but steadily, rising to meet the pressure instead of being crushed by it. The weight did not disappear. It changed. It bent. Just enough for her to stand. Just enough for her to breathe. Darius saw it happen. He felt it too, the shift in the balance of power that should not have been possible. He stepped forward, placing himself directly in front of her, his presence cutting through the pressure like a blade. Enough, he said, his voice sharper now, carrying command that demanded obedience. The council faltered, but only slightly. She is resisting us, the elder said, his voice strained now, no longer fully in control. No human should be able to do that. That is exactly why she must be removed. Darius' eyes darkened. You're not trying to remove her, he said. You're trying to destroy something you do not understand. The elder took another step forward, defiance burning through the last of his restraint. And you are choosing to protect it. The words collided in the air, and for a moment it felt like the entire chamber might fracture under the weight of what was being decided. Clara looked between them, her heart pounding again, but not with fear, with realization. This was not just about her anymore. This was about power, about control, about something far older than either of them. And somehow, she was at the center of it. The pressure in the room intensified again, sharper this time, more focused, directed entirely at her. The council was no longer testing. They were acting. Clara felt her knees weaken again, the force pressing harder, trying to break her balance, trying to force her down. But the echo inside her rose again, stronger this time, answering without hesitation. The golden lines across the floor flickered back to life, faint but unmistakable, spreading outward once more from the base of the throne. The chamber responded instantly. The pressure cracked, not shattered, but fractured just enough to stop its advance. Darius did not look back at the throne. He did not need to. He knew what it meant. He knew what was happening. And when he spoke again, his voice carried something new. Not just command, decision. She stays. The words settled over the chamber like a final verdict. And for the first time since the throne had awakened, the conflict was no longer hidden beneath tension. It was open, clear, and irreversible. The word stays did not echo, but its impact spread farther than any command spoken that night. It settled into the stone, into the air, into every mind present, forcing a choice that could no longer be avoided. The council did not retreat. This time, they did not hesitate. Then you have chosen against us, the crimson-robed elder said, his voice no longer strained, no longer uncertain. It had changed, hardened, resolved. You have chosen her over the throne, over your own bloodline. The accusation hung heavy, but Darius Nightvale did not correct him. Because for the first time in centuries, The truth was not simple enough to defend. The throne behind him pulsed again, quieter now, but deliberate, as if marking each moment with growing awareness. Clara Whitmore stood just behind him, her breathing uneven but steady, her body still adjusting to the pressure that had only just begun to ease. She could feel the shift in the room. The lines had been drawn, and now something was about to break. The council moved as one, not forward, not toward her, but outward, spreading slightly, forming a loose circle that was not meant to attack, but to contain. Ancient words were spoken, low and precise, not shouted, not dramatic, but controlled in a way that made them far more dangerous. Clara did not understand the language, but she felt its effect immediately. The air thickened again, not like pressure this time, but like something sealing shut. The exits, the walls, even the space around them. They were closing the chamber. No one leaves, the elder said. Not until this is resolved. Darius turned slightly, his gaze sweeping across the forming circle, measuring, calculating, understanding exactly what they were attempting. A containment rite. Old, rare, used only when something inside their own walls became too dangerous to allow beyond them. You would seal your king inside his own throne room, he said quietly. The elder did not flinch. If that is what it takes to protect what remains of this kingdom, then yes. The final word fell into place. Kingdom, not king. The distinction was clear now. Clara felt the echo inside her react again, but differently this time. Not defensive, not reactive. Aware, as if it understood the words spoken around her, even if she did not. The golden lines along the floor flickered faintly, not expanding, not retreating, but watching. Waiting. Darius stepped forward, just enough to stand fully within the circle the council had begun to form. You believe this will hold me, he said. It was not arrogance. It was fact. The elder met his gaze without hesitation. Not you, my king. Her. The truth of that struck deeper than any threat. Clara felt it immediately. This was never about stopping him. It was about isolating her. The realization sent a sharp wave of cold through her chest, but she did not step back. She did not move at all, because somewhere beneath the fear, something else had begun to take root. Understanding. Darius did not look back at her, but his voice shifted, just enough for her to hear the difference. Stay where you are, he said. Do not step outside the light. Clara glanced down. The faint golden lines around her feet had formed a loose pattern, barely visible, but present. A boundary. She had not noticed when it appeared. The council continued their chant, the words growing stronger, more defined, layering over each other until the chamber itself seemed to respond. The walls darkened. The air tightened. The space shrank, not physically, but in a way that made every breath feel closer, heavier. And then it happened. The light beneath Clara's feet flared. Not outward, inward. The pattern tightened, focusing around her, isolating her completely from the rest of the room. She was no longer just standing in the chamber. She was the center of it. The council stopped speaking, not because they were finished, because something had answered them, something they had not expected. The elder stared at the light, his expression shifting for the first time from control to something far more dangerous. Doubt. That is not our doing, he said quietly. No one responded, because everyone could see it. The containment had worked, but not in the way they intended. They had sealed the chamber, but the throne had claimed the center, and Clara Whitmore was standing inside it. Darius took one step forward, his voice cutting through the silence with absolute clarity. You wanted to contain the threat. He paused, his gaze locking onto the elder. Now you have given a boundary. The golden light pulsed once more, brighter than before. And this time, it did not feel like something waiting to be controlled. It felt like something preparing to choose. The golden light did not fade. It intensified. What had once been a faint pattern beneath Clara Whitmore's feet now burned with deliberate precision, each line sharpening, deepening, as if something unseen was carving meaning into existence. The chamber felt smaller, not because the walls had moved, but because the center had become absolute. Everything led to her. Everything waited on her. The council sensed it at the same moment. "This is wrong," the crimson-robed elder said, his voice no longer controlled, no longer certain. "This is not how the rite was designed. The containment should isolate the threat, not empower it." His eyes locked on Clara, and for the first time, there was something unmistakable there. Fear, not of her as she was, but of what she might become. King Darius Nightvale did not look at the council. His focus remained on Clara, on the light surrounding her, on the shift that was no longer subtle. It was happening now. "The past does not disappear," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. "It waits." The elder turned sharply toward him. "What are you saying?" Darius finally met his gaze. "I am saying this throne has not awakened to a stranger. It has awakened to something it remembers." The words landed harder than any command. Memory, blood, lineage, the three things that define the throne. Clara felt the echo inside her respond instantly. Not as a pulse, as a recognition. Images flickered at the edge of her mind, too fast to grasp, too distant to hold, but unmistakable. A hall like this one, but brighter. Voices that did not sound like the ones around her now. A presence beside the throne that felt familiar in a way she could not explain. She gasped softly, her hand lifting slightly as if reaching for something that was no longer there. Darius saw it. "Tell me what you see," he said, his voice steady, anchoring. Clara shook her head, struggling to find words that made sense. "I do not see clearly," she said. "It feels like I am remembering something I have never lived." The elder stepped back, his expression tightening further. "That is not memory," he said. "That is inheritance." The truth settled into the chamber with a weight that could not be ignored. Darius' eyes narrowed slightly, not in denial, but in calculation. "Say it," he said. The elder hesitated, just for a moment. Then he spoke. "The throne does not choose at random. It answers only to the blood of those who once ruled it, those who were bound to it before your line ever claimed it." Clara felt the air leave her lungs. The implication was clear, even to her. "But that is impossible," the elder continued quickly, as if trying to contain the very idea he had just released. "That bloodline was ended, erased. There are no surviving heirs. There cannot be." The golden light flared again, brighter than before, as if rejecting the statement itself. Darius turned slowly toward Clara, his gaze no longer searching, no longer questioning. It was certain now, not of the answer, but of the direction. "Your last name," he said. Clara blinked, thrown by the sudden shift. "Whitmore," she said automatically. Darius' expression did not change, but something in the room did. The elder inhaled sharply, the sound barely contained. "Whitmore," he repeated, the word heavier now, carrying weight that had nothing to do with the present. "That name should not exist here." Clara felt the echo inside her surge again, stronger, clearer, pulling something forward from the edge of her awareness. Not an image this time, a feeling, belonging. The throne pulsed in response. Darius did not look away from her. There were records, he said slowly, pieces of history that were never meant to be found again. A queen who ruled before the council was formed, before my bloodline took the throne. A queen who vanished without a body, without proof of death. The elder shook his head immediately. That is legend, a story told to justify a transition of power. Darius' voice did not rise. It did not need to. Legends are only stories until something proves them wrong. Clara felt the truth of that before anyone else did, because the light around her shifted again, no longer flickering, no longer uncertain. It stabilized. The golden lines around her feet locked into place, forming a complete pattern that had not existed before. Whole, defined, final. The chamber fell silent once more, not because there was nothing left to say, but because something had just been confirmed. The throne had not chosen a servant. It had recognized an heir. And now, for the first time in centuries, the question was no longer who sat on the throne. It was who it truly belonged to. The word heir did not echo, but it did not need to. It settled into every corner of the chamber, into every thought, every instinct, every fear that had been building since the throne first awakened. Clara Whitmore stood at the center of it all, the golden pattern beneath her now complete, no longer shifting, no longer uncertain. It held her there, not as a prisoner, but as something far more dangerous, as the center of authority. No one moved, not the guards, not the council. Even the air itself seemed to pause, as if waiting for the world to decide what came next. Then Clara took a breath. It was small, unsteady, human, and yet it broke the stillness more completely than any command. "I do not want this," she said quietly. The words were simple, but they cut deeper than anything spoken before. Every head turned toward her again, but this time not with fear, with something closer to disbelief. Darius Nightvale did not react immediately. He watched her, studied her, as if measuring the truth behind those words. Clara shook her head slightly, her eyes moving from the throne to the chamber, to the guards, to the council, and finally back to him. "I came here to clean a room," she continued. "I did not come here to take anything from anyone." The honesty in her voice did not weaken her position. It complicated it. The council elder stepped forward again, seizing the opening. "You hear her," he said, his tone sharper now, controlled once more. "She does not even understand what she is. That alone proves she is not fit to hold this power. The throne must be restored to its rightful ruler." The word rightful lingered, heavy with implication. Darius finally moved, not toward the council, toward Clara. He stopped just outside the golden pattern, close enough to speak without raising his voice. "You think this is something you can refuse?" he said quietly. Clara met his gaze, her expression steady despite everything. "I think it is not mine to take," she replied. The answer hung between them, fragile and unguarded. For a moment, the king said nothing. Then slowly he nodded, not in agreement, in understanding. "The throne does not ask," he said. "It recognizes. That is the difference." Clara looked down at the light beneath her feet, the pattern that had formed without her choice, without her knowledge. "It does not feel like recognition," she said. "It feels like something is pulling me into a place I do not belong." The golden lines pulsed softly, as if responding to her doubt. Darius' voice lowered further, softer now, but no less certain. "Or it feels like you are finally standing where you were always meant to stand." The words settled into her, not as a command, but as a possibility she could not immediately reject. The council did not wait for her to decide. "Enough," the elder said, his voice cutting through the moment. "This hesitation is exactly why she cannot remain. Power without understanding is chaos, and chaos will destroy us all." He raised his hand, and this time the energy that gathered around him was different. Sharper, focused, not a test, not containment, a final act. The guards reacted instantly, not stepping forward, but shifting their stance, preparing for something decisive. Clara felt it building, the pressure rising again, but this time it was not directed at her body. It was directed at the space itself. The center, the throne, the connection. Darius turned, his expression hardening in an instant. "Do not," he said. The warning came too late. The council released there. Power all at once, not outward but inward, targeting the golden pattern beneath Clara's feet, attempting to sever it from the throne before it could fully bind. The chamber erupted with light. Not gold, not dark, something in between. The force struck the pattern, and for a fraction of a second, it flickered. Clara gasped as the connection surged violently, pain finally breaking through where there had only been sensation before. Her knees buckled, and she dropped slightly, her hand instinctively reaching toward the throne again. The moment her skin touched the stone, everything changed. The golden light exploded outward, not as a shield, not as a defense, but as a declaration. The council power shattered against it, not destroyed, but redirected, forced back with equal force. The elders staggered, their control slipping as the energy they had released turned against them. The chamber shook, the pillars cracking faintly as the ancient structure responded to a power it had not felt in generations. Darius stepped forward instantly, not stopping the force, but placing himself between Clara and the council, his presence anchoring the chaos just enough to keep it from spiraling beyond control. Clara remained on her knees, her hand pressed against the throne, her breath uneven, her vision blurred, but the connection was no longer uncertain. It was absolute. The golden pattern beneath her flared one final time, brighter than anything before, and then it settled. Not fading, not weakening, stabilizing. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was different. Not tension, not waiting. Finality. The council had acted. The throne had answered. And Clara Whitmore was no longer just connected to it. She was bound to it. The light did not recede. It settled into her, into the throne, into the very structure of the chamber, as if something long fractured had finally aligned again. Clara Whitmore remained on her knees, her hands still pressed against the black stone, her breathing uneven but slowing with each passing second. The pain that had surged through her moments ago began to fade, replaced by something deeper, something steadier. Not power. Not yet. Awareness. The connection was no longer forcing itself upon her. It was present, constant, waiting. The golden pattern beneath her no longer pulsed wildly. It held, complete, unbroken. Around her, the chamber bore the marks of what had just occurred. Fine cracks traced along the pillars. Faint but real. The council stood scattered, their composure shaken, their control fractured in a way none of them had experienced in centuries. For the first time since they had entered, they did not look at Clara with authority. They looked at her with caution. King Darius Nightvale stood between her and them, unmoved, his presence steady, but no longer the sole center of the room. That shift cannot be undone. Slowly, Clara lifted her head. The movement was small, but it drew every eye back to her. She blinked, her vision clearing, the world settling into focus again. The throne no longer felt distant. It no longer felt foreign. It felt known, not in memory, in instinct. She did not understand how. She did not understand why, but she felt it. Darius watched her carefully, his gaze sharper now, not searching, but assessing what had changed. Clara, he said quietly. She turned her head toward him, meeting his eyes. There was no fear there now, not because she was unafraid, because the fear had been replaced by something else, something quieter. What just happened? She asked. Her voice was steady, but softer than before, not fragile, grounded. Darius did not answer immediately. He stepped closer, stopping just at the edge of the golden pattern, careful not to cross it without knowing the cost. You survived what should have destroyed you, he said. And in doing so, you completed the binding. The word binding no longer sounded like a threat. It sounded like a fact. Clara looked down at her hand, still resting on the throne, then slowly lifted it. This time, the light did not surge. It did not resist. It followed. Faint golden lines trailed briefly along her skin before fading into nothing, leaving no mark, but leaving no doubt. The connection remained. The council elder stepped forward cautiously, his earlier authority replaced with careful restraint. It is done, he said. The throne is chosen. The binding is complete. His voice lowered slightly, not out of respect, but out of recognition of what that meant. The balance has shifted. Darius turned toward him, his expression unreadable. The balance has changed before, he said. It did not end us then. The elder shook his head. This is not the same. Before, power was transferred. This time, it has been reclaimed. The distinction settled heavily in the air. Clara felt it too, not as a concept, as a presence. The throne was no longer behind her. It was with her, not controlling, not demanding, existing, waiting. She pushed herself to her feet slowly, her movements steady, her body no longer resisting the force that had once overwhelmed her. When she stood fully upright, something shifted again, subtle, but undeniable. The chamber responded, not with light, not with sound, with alignment. The space itself seemed to recognize her position, the way it had once recognized Darius alone. The guards lowered their weapons completely now, not out of command, but out of instinct. The council did not speak, because there was nothing left to argue. The truth had already been decided. Clara looked around the chamber, at the faces that had once seen her as nothing more than a servant, at the throne that had once been a symbol she did not understand. Then she looked back at Darius. "What happens now?" she asked. The question was simple. The answer was not. Darius held her gaze for a long moment, then spoke with a quiet certainty that carried more weight than any command he had given that night. "Now, you learn what it means to stand where you are standing." The words settled into her, not as pressure, not as expectation, but as something she could not step away from. Because whether she wanted it or not, whether she understood it or not, the truth remained unchanged. She was no longer outside this world. She was at the center of it. And for the first time, the throne did not feel like something distant. It felt like something that had been waiting for her all along. The chamber remained still, but it was no longer the stillness of tension. It was the stillness that follows a decision that cannot be undone. Clara Whitmore stood at the center, no longer held in place by fear or force, but by something far more permanent. The throne did not call to her anymore. It rested with her. The golden light that had once surged and flared now existed as a quiet presence, woven into the air, into the stone, into her very breath. Across from her, the council stood silent, not defeated, not broken, but changed. The crimson-robed elder lowered his head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement of a truth. He could no longer deny. "The throne has chosen," he said, his voice steady once more, though quieter than before. "The old blood has returned." The words carried through the chamber, settling into every corner like a final seal. No one argued. No one moved to challenge it, because the proof stood before them. Darius Night Vale watched Clara without interruption. For the first time since the moment he had entered this room, he was not the only center of power. And yet, there was no anger in his gaze. No resentment. Only something far more complex. Understanding. And something that had not existed before. Respect. Slowly, he stepped forward. Not with the authority of a king issuing command. Not with the force of someone reclaiming control. But with intention. Measured. Certain. He stopped a few feet in front of her. Then, without breaking eye contact, he did something no one in that chamber had ever seen him do before. He bowed his head. The movement was slight, controlled, but unmistakable. The guards reacted instantly, their bodies tensing in shock, their instincts struggling against what they were witnessing. The council did not move, but their silence deepened. Because this was not submission. It was recognition. Clara did not step back. She did not reach for the throne. She simply stood there, her breath steady, her eyes searching his as if trying to understand what this meant. "You do not belong beneath this throne," Darius said quietly. The words were not harsh. They were not bitter. They were true. Clara felt them settle inside her, heavy but not unwelcome. "I never wanted to be above anyone," she replied. Her voice was calm, grounded in a way it had not been before. Darius lifted his head slightly, his gaze steady. "That is why you were chosen," he said. The answer was simple, but it carried a weight that no one in that room could ignore. Power had not been taken. It had been given, not to the strongest, not to the most ruthless, but to the one who did not seek it. The chamber responded subtly, the air shifting as if aligning itself with that truth. The golden presence did not flare. It settled deeper, quieter, more certain. Clara turned slowly, looking toward the throne that had changed everything. For a moment, she simply watched it. The black stone no longer felt distant. It no longer felt like something she was separate from. It felt like something that had been waiting for her to recognize it. Then she made her choice. She did not sit. She did not claim the seat in the way anyone expected. Instead, she stepped forward, placing her hand lightly against the arm of the throne, not as a ruler claiming power, but as someone acknowledging it. "I do not need to sit to know what this means," she said quietly. The words carried through the chamber, not as defiance, but as clarity. "I will not rule through fear. I will not take what was given to someone else." Her gaze lifted, meeting Darius again. "But I will not walk away from this either." The balance settled in that moment. Not broken, not replaced, changed. Darius straightened fully, his posture returning, but not entirely the same. Then we do not stand against each other, he said. We stand together. The council exchanged glances, uncertainty still present, but no longer dominant. Because the truth was clear now. This was not a replacement of power. It was a transformation of it. Clara Whitmore stepped back from the throne, not as a servant, not as an intruder, but as something new, something the world had not seen in centuries. The throne remained behind her, no longer the only center of power. And as the chambers slowly began to breathe again, one truth settled above all others. The kingdom had not lost its king. It had gained something it never expected. A queen who had once been told to clean the throne, and who instead had become the one it had been waiting for all along.